We have all been in so much pain the past few days with the murder of the 6 hostages that were being held by Hamas. And today, joining us in the studio is a Nova survivor who, by the grace of God, survived to live to tell the story. Um, I get emotional when I see you because you're such a warrior and you're so incredible. Natalie Sanandaji is a public affairs officer for Combat Anti-Semitism movement, and she has been speaking around the globe about her experience and how she survived the Nova Festival. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for who you are. You've really just put your life on hold and been pursuing the truth. You've been speaking the truth. That's all you've been doing since October 7th.
I mean, yes. At first, I started doing it because I felt like I owed it to all of those who weren't as lucky as me. I felt that I wanted to be their voice. All those who were murdered on October 7th, all those who were murdered since October 7th, all those who have been taken hostage, and all those who, until today, are too traumatized to speak out about what they witnessed on that day. So I really did it for them, and anytime people say, thank you for what you're doing, my answer is, it's the least I can do for them to be their voice because they no longer have one.
I just know all the pain comes up every time you recount the story and what happened for you. But I think it's so important for people to hear it because it's real and it happened. And you were lucky to survive. Can you give us a glimpse into what happened to you and where you were on October 7th?
So on October 7th, me and three friends who are all Israeli, I was the only American in the group, we arrived at the Nova Festival at around 1 a.m. And we danced for a few hours, and then we decided to take a rest for a few hours and wake up for the sunrise set, which is typically supposed to be the best part of the festival. And we went to sleep at around 3:30, and we, instead of being woken up, to the music of the sunrise set, we were woken up to the sound of rockets. And I think what's really important for Americans to understand is kind of the way I was woken up. So I was sleeping. I was, sitting in a camping chair, sleeping very close to where the dance floor was of the festival. And one of our friends who was on the dance floor at the time when the first rockets were sent our way and were intercepted overhead, she wanted to come over and make sure that she woke us up to make sure we were alert to the situation. So she came over and she was so calm and she was smiley. And like I said, I was the only American. Everyone else with me was Israeli. And she came over and she nudged us awake and she's smiling. And she's like, Boker Tov, guys, which is good morning in Hebrew. And she was like, I just want you to know, a few rockets were intercepted overhead, but it's fine. We all know that it's kind of normal, especially because of the area that we're near. And she was like, it's okay. It's probably just going to be a few. It's going to pass. The party's going to continue. Nothing to really worry about. And I always try to tell people, imagine American kids at Coachella and suddenly rockets are intercepted over their heads. And imagine them reacting in such a calm manner. That simply would not happen. But unfortunately for Israeli kids, this is their reality. This is something that they witness and go through on a semi-regular basis. And for me, even though I'm the daughter of an Israeli mother and I've been going to Israel almost every year my entire life, it just so happens I had never been to Israel at a time of war. So for me, this was a new experience. And I kind of tried to look to my Israeli friends and look to see their reaction and follow suit. So we all stayed fairly calm in the beginning. And a few months after, when I went back to Israel, is when I really realized how, quote unquote, normal this is for Israelis, because I was working in an office space in Tel Aviv and I was eating lunch outside and suddenly the red alarms went off and we all ran into the bomb shelter. We waited 10 minutes. We walked back outside and we went back to work. Nobody was freaking out. Everything, it was you go about your day. Because truly for Israelis, a lot of people asked me, why didn't you start running right away? And my answer was that for Israelis, if they were to stop everything that they were doing, every time a few rockets were intercepted over their heads, they wouldn't get anything done. So to them, it was okay, we're going to wait this out. It's probably just going to be a few, and then we're going to continue to party and enjoy life. So We stood there by our campsite, and I remember just standing up and looking at the sky and counting the rockets as they're being intercepted overhead. And I remember first it was 5, and then it was 10, and then it was 15, and then it was 20. And I think somewhere between 15 and 20 is when we started to get nervous. We're like, okay, like, this isn't just like another ordinary situation of like our neighbors trying to scare us or disrupt our peace. There's like more going on here. And around that time is when the festival security had shut off the music, and they asked everyone to please pack up their things and evacuate to their cars. And that's what we did. We packed up our stuff. We start walking out. And at this time, we're still pretty calm. You know, we figured it's quote unquote just rockets, which is, it sounds like a ridiculous thing to say, but that's how we felt. And we thought, you know, we have the Iron Dome, we'll be okay. And our biggest fear was, number one, maybe the scraps from the intercepted rockets like hitting our cars as we're trying to drive out of the festival grounds. And number two, being stuck in traffic, because it was over 3,000 people all trying to leave at the same time. So we head to the cars, we start driving out, and the festival security is kind of guiding everyone in different directions, almost like sheep herders on either side of this like dirt road. And they're all trying to like guide us to safety. And eventually they start yelling at us to pull our cars over and to get out of our cars and start running. And me and my 3 friends that I originally came with were all sitting in the car, and we're so confused, you know, why would they tell us to run from rockets? That doesn't make any sense. But we figured, you know, they know something that we don't know, and we should just listen to them. So we pulled our car over, and we're sitting in the car for a few moments, just like looking at each other confused. And that's when we heard the first gunshots.
Wow. So you literally ran for your life.
From that moment, we looked at each other and we just opened our doors and started running. And it was just complete chaos. People were running in every direction. Nobody understood what direction was the direction of safety. Nobody really understood what direction they were coming from. Eventually, we understood that they were coming from multiple directions and kind of like closing in on us.
How did you make it to safety?
So that's kind of the second most common question I got asked when I started interviewing after October 7th. The first was, why didn't you panic right away? And the second was, how did you know what decisions to make to save your life? And I had a very hard time answering this question because the answer is that nobody knew. And then I spoke at a vigil in Columbus Circle. This was a few months into the war. And a man came up to me and he said that he had seen many of my interviews and he saw that I was having kind of a hard time answering this question. And he said that he had interviewed many Holocaust survivors in his life. And when Holocaust survivors were asked that same question in life and death situations, how they knew what decisions to make to save their life, they coined a term called a choiceless choice. And basically the meaning of this term is that in those life and death situations, you don't have much time to try to like figure out in your brain which decision is going to be the safer decision, which decision is going to save your life as opposed to getting you killed. But you simply have to make a choice in that moment. You can't just stand there. You have to choose something. And that perfectly describes every decision we made while running from the Hamas terrorists. They were all choiceless choices. And an example of one of those choiceless choices was probably about 3 hours into running. We passed by a group of people, me and the 3 people I originally came with. We passed by a group of maybe 10, 15 people that we shared a campsite with. And they were all hiding in a ditch. And they saw us and they called us over and they're like, guys, come here, come hide with us, come hide. And we start crawling into the ditch. And one of the 3 friends I came with started yelling at the 3 of us. And he was like, no, you guys, this is a bad idea. If we hide in this ditch, we're sitting ducks. If Hamas terrorists find us in this ditch, they're going to shoot us right on the spot. He yelled at us and he said, hiding is not an option. Our only option for survival is to continue running. So we continued to run. And unfortunately for the friends that we left behind, he was right. We found out a few days later that none of them made it out of that ditch. And that's just one of the many choices we made, whether it was turning left or right, continuing to run or hiding. And somehow we made it out. I think I really owe my life to this one person. about 4 hours into running, we didn't hear gunshots for a few minutes, and we sat down under a small tree to get some shade from the sun. If you could imagine, we're all wearing festival clothing. We're not dressed for running. It's extremely hot. We're in the sun. We don't have water. We don't have food. It's been hours. And we sat down to get some shade, and then we see this pickup truck coming towards us. And for all of us, it was me and my 3 friends, maybe like 10 other people sitting under this tiny tree. And our automatic reaction was that this is a terrorist coming to kill us, because the Hamas terrorists were known to be driving these pickup trucks. And we all kind of contemplated running. We like half got up, and then we all simultaneously realized, like, if this is a terrorist, like, we have nowhere to run to. They're in a car, they have guns, we're on foot, we have nothing to protect ourselves with. And we all kind of just sat back down and looked at each other and kind of smiled and nodded as if to say, you know, it was nice knowing you, and kind of accepting our fate. And as he got closer, we realized that this was someone coming to save us. And his name was Moshe Sati. He's from the town of Patish, which was a nearby town that I think majority of the survivors of this festival ended up in. And he picked us up and he drove us to his town. And as soon as he dropped us off, he turned right back around to go save more people. And because of that, it took me a few months to track him down and to find him, to thank him. And when I finally got to meet him again, I found out that him and his son drove back and forth from Patish, from their hometown, to the festival grounds for about 8 or 10 hours, risking their lives over and over again to save lives of people they don't even know. And they saved about, I would say, 300 to 400 lives that day.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Like a real-life angel.
I mean, Natalie, you lived through a nightmare, and you were born into a family. Your mother is Israeli, your father is Iranian, and so you know all too well what your father had to go through leaving Iran and the Islamic Republic, and you experienced a glimpse into it that day. And now, seeing what's happening in the streets of New York, which is your home, how does that make you feel?
That's something I try to explain to a lot of people, is that this war really touches on every aspect of who I am as a person. I'm not only the outcome of the Jewish diaspora, but I'm also the outcome of the Iranian Jewish diaspora. I'm the daughter of an Israeli, I'm the daughter of an Iranian, I'm American, I'm a woman, and I'm a survivor of the Nova Festival. I don't think there's an aspect of my life that this war doesn't touch on. And that's something I want people to understand. You know, I see these Americans, these entitled young people who grew up with so much privilege, yelling in the streets, "Intifada now." And I know that they don't actually understand what they're yelling about. I know that they don't understand, because there's no way that they would walk around, be willing to give up every freedom that they have in this world, everything that makes them this entitled person. You're really willing to give all of that up. And I know that they don't know what they're talking about. And then I see the messages that I get from Iranians that understand that we have the same enemy, because their families are being killed by the regime. They know what this war is really about. And they message me with so much love and so much support and tell me to keep speaking out as much as I can. And it's really just a shame. I really hope that all these Americans who are out protesting Intifada now, and also it's unfortunate that they're yelling in the streets, "Free Palestine." The words "Free Palestine" didn't have to become what they've become today. It has a completely different meaning than what it should have had. Yes, there should be a free Palestine from Hamas. The Palestinians shouldn't have to live under the rule of a terrorist organization. But that's not what they're fighting about. When they chant "Free Palestine," what they really mean is kill the Jews and run the Jews out of Israel. So it has a completely different meaning than what it could have had. But I really hope it's not too late by the time they realize that they're fighting for the wrong thing, that they're fighting for the wrong side of history. Because I do feel like it's starting to become too late. I do feel that, you know, we're even seeing it today. I recently saw a video of 2 Americans in Turkey, And these Americans were just, walking around minding their own business. And suddenly these Turkish men grabbed them and started attacking them and hitting them. And I see that people in other parts of the world no longer have respect for who an American is. There's no longer that sense of respect towards America.
Yeah.
Because they see Americans within America chanting Intifada now. And I do feel like the tides are turning in a very bad way. And it does make me very nervous.
I mean, Hamas murdered an American citizen 2 days ago, and our government didn't do anything about it. How many more hostages do we still have? And how many Americans are still being held, Natalie? And what is America really doing about it? I mean, like you say, there was a time where having an American passport was a golden ticket. It's not the case anymore.
It's definitely not the case. I mean, Hirsch, he was an American citizen, and when he was being held in Gaza and we wanted to go into Rafah and save him, what did Biden and Kamala say? They threatened Netanyahu and they told him not to go in. If Netanyahu didn't listen, if we went in, Hirsch might be alive today. He was alive about 2 days before we found him. And we still have 101 hostages in Gaza. A number of them are not alive, unfortunately. And a number of them are American citizens. And what is our government doing to protect them? What does it mean to be an American citizen anymore if your own government isn't trying to save you, isn't trying to protect you? I don't feel like having an American passport, I don't feel like being an American citizen holds the same value as it once did. And I think the world sees that, and it's frightening.
It is so frightening because I'm an Iranian American as well. I was only a year old when I came here, and so I don't remember, but my mom remembers. And she says that all of the trauma is coming back now as she watches because she feels like it's happening all over again. And this is not the America that she came to. And so it's really frightening. But you're doing something about it. And so many young people are standing up and they're speaking and they're doing something about it. And you're working for the Combat Antisemitism movement too. Tell us a little bit about your work there and how that movement is trying to change things.
So, before October 7th, I was working in real estate in New York. And right after October 7th, I always explained to people that I was still very disassociated. And I felt like my disassociation gave me the power to tell my story over and over again. Like you said before that it must bring up a lot of trauma to tell my story over and over again and to speak about it. And in the beginning, it didn't. And I felt like that was my superpower because I still was disassociated. I was able to tell my story over and over again without re-traumatizing myself. So I started interviewing and I started speaking out. And then the Combat Antisemitism movement reached out to me. And they sent me to D.C. I think it was about a week and a half after the war started. And I got to meet senators and tell them my story. And the goal was to make what happened to the Jewish people on that day human again, because so many people were trying to dehumanize what happened to us. And the goal and the hope was that having me come and speak in front of them, showing them that this could have been your daughter, this could have been your friend, that it might make them care a little bit more. Right after that, I started working for them officially. And it's been an incredible experience because a lot of the basis of the Combat Antisemitism movement is as an organization rather than just working within the Jewish community, which can kind of feel like an echo chamber and kind of feel like you're preaching to the choir. Their goal is to work outside the Jewish community and to build bridges with other communities, with Christians, with Muslims, with leaders from every country all over the world. And it's really been an incredible experience because sometimes, especially as a survivor, when you see all these protests in the streets, you can feel like the whole world is against you. You can feel like everyone hates you and kind of like wishes that you actually did die on that day. But through this work, I get to meet so many people from so many different backgrounds that support us and are on our side and remind me on a daily basis that we have allies. Not everyone is our enemy. And it's really an incredible feeling knowing that we have allies.
For you, in a sense as well, to be within your community and to know that you're supported.
Yes. It gave me the opportunity to, to continue with my life and to be able to work and kind of like take me out of what happened to me without having to forget what happened to me. It let me take this horrible thing that happened to me and try to turn it into something good. So it's really been an incredible experience.
I mean, you've seen pure evil firsthand. You've seen it with your own eyes, unfortunately, at such a young age. Just look into the camera here and talk to young Americans and share with them what you think is so important, maybe the point that they're missing today.
I mean, like you said, I saw it with my own eyes. I saw the hate and the evil. And what I want young Americans to realize is kind of like what you just mentioned, that your mom said, that it's bringing back all this trauma of being in Iran and seeing all these young people in Iran kind of protest in the streets and bring this horrible regime into power. And today they feel so much regret for that. And I see these young Americans fighting in the streets, fighting for something that I know they have no idea what they're fighting for. And I just want people to understand how lucky we are, how lucky we are to be part of a democracy, how lucky we are to have the freedoms that we have, and to really try to understand what they're yelling in the streets about. Because to me, I don't think if most of these people really understood what they were yelling about, I don't think they would be out in the streets yelling about it. And I also want people to understand that, especially as a Jew, as the daughter of an Israeli, as a survivor, I think every life is equal. I think every life is worth something. I don't see any innocent death in the middle of a war as a good thing. And I just wish other people would have the same respect for all the lives that were lost on our side on that day. Just yesterday, a vigil was held in New York for the 6 hostages that we lost. And on the same day, people were out in the streets yelling "Intifada now." And it's very hard to see that. It's very hard to see how little respect people have for those lives that were lost because they were so innocent. I would just really love for people to, if anything, to do their own research, to not just believe anything that they read or see online. And I think that's a huge thing that I learned for myself from all this war is from now on, anytime I hear something on the news about another country that I'm not from, about a war that quote unquote doesn't involve me, that I'm going to go do my own research instead of just believing everything that I hear on the news, because the things that I see on the news are ridiculous. The headlines that I see are blatant lies. And if anything, it's taught me to be more sensitive to other groups that aren't necessarily personally affecting me and aren't necessarily personally a part of my life. And if anything, I'm grateful for that it's taught me to be a more thoughtful person in that sense.
That's great advice. And I think for young people who really want to be a part of a social justice movement, because we all do, we all want to be on the right side of history. Mm-hmm. I think the one message that everyone should not be conflicted about is to bring home the hostages. They're innocent human beings, and that we should all be fighting for that. That's what every college student should be rallying for on their campuses. Bring home the hostages. It's not about right or wrong. It's about what's good. So,
yeah, it kind of goes back to a lot of people were yelling for ceasefire now, which isn't a bad thing. Nobody wants war. Yes, that's great. Let's have a ceasefire now and bring all the hostages home. You can't have a ceasefire and just leave them in Gaza. No. That's not an option.
No, it's not. I'm so happy that you have survived to tell your story. And I know that it's painful, and I see it in your eyes. And we all appreciate you, Natalie, and all that you're doing, because your story is making a difference. And the more you speak up and you speak the truth, the more people will understand how painful that day was for you and so many. And I'm so happy that your mom and dad have you at home and that they can hold you, thank God. and that you're here and continue to do the good that you're doing, because it's definitely making a difference.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
hope it is.
It is. It is. And thank you so much for joining us today. You sat right here on Moms Matter. And please share this with everyone who may not know what happened on October 7th. The more we share these stories, the more people will be educated and informed. And we'll see you all next time right here.